You ever wake up on a Saturday morning and just know the universe is about to serve you a steaming pile of chaos with your coffee? That was me, Marcus Taylor, age 38, suburban dad bod included, minding my own damn business in the sacred quiet of my weekend. Birds chirping, lawn glistening like an HGTV cover shoot, and me, armed with a fresh mug of Colombian roast and the full, unfiltered local paper, settled into my porch chair like a king surveying his kingdom. And what a kingdom it was. Elm Street. Quiet, leafy, safe. The kind of neighborhood where the most dramatic thing usually involves a missing Amazon package or someone planting begonias too close to the property line. My two-story house sat on half an acre of meticulously manicured pride. I'd sunk 3 years and an unhealthy amount of YouTube landscaping tutorials into sculpting the front lawn into an emerald masterpiece. Seriously, this lawn had stripes that would make a baseball field weep. A $7,000 irrigation system timed more precisely than my sleep schedule. Mulch beds edged like a damn military parade. And flowers? Buddy, my flower beds looked like Monet personally blessed them. Then came Karen. Sorry, Patricia Henderson. But let's not pretend she wasn't the walking, talking final boss of Karens. She lived next door, though lived might be generous. I'd seen the Hendersons a grand total of twice in 5 years. Once when their Labradoodle Houdini'd its way into my backyard and got stuck under my grill, and once when their son's baseball made a one-way trip through my kitchen window. Both incidents had ended with polite, if not robotic, apologies and minimal interaction. Harmless, right? Wrong. That particular Saturday, the August sun was doing its best impression of a sauna, and I was relishing the 10-minute window before it turned my porch into a frying pan. The sprinklers had just wrapped their morning show, and the lawn shimmered with morning dew like a $1,000 photo op. I was halfway through a sip of coffee when I saw it. A white Toyota Camry. Bland enough to be anonymous. It rolled up to my driveway like it owned the deed. Not, I'll turn around here, kinda stop. Not, just dropping someone off. No, this car parked. On. My. Driveway. I blinked. Was this some confused DoorDash driver? A long-lost friend? Nope. Out steps a woman dressed like Easter Sunday exploded in TJ Maxx. Hair blown out into something resembling cotton candy with ambition. Pink floral dress that somehow screamed matriarchal dominion, and heels that might have been rejected from a Barbie playset for being too extra. She looked around like she was appraising property values and then, without so much as a glance at me, strolled up toward the Henderson house. Excuse me, I called out, setting down my coffee with the weary dread of a man who already knew this was going to ruin his day. You're parked in my driveway. She turned with the speed and grace of a woman unaccustomed to being addressed by peasants. Her expression said, "Ugh, a local." She squinted at me like I'd offended her by speaking English. "Oh, that's fine, honey," she said with a wave of her manicured hand. "We're just setting up for the wedding." Honey. She honeyed me. Let me tell you something. If someone calls you honey while standing on your property without permission, it's not a term of endearment. It's a declaration of war. What wedding? I asked, though I already had a pretty grim idea where this was heading. My daughter's wedding, of course. Rebecca Henderson? She's marrying that darling boy from the country club. She smiled like that explained everything. I'm Patricia Henderson, Rebecca's mother. She actually said it like she expected me to throw confetti and roll out a red carpet. And you are? The guy whose driveway you just claimed like it's the Oregon Trail, I replied, standing up slowly. Oh, Marcus, she said with faux delight, like we were old pals catching up at brunch. It's just for the afternoon. We're expecting a few guests, and parking's a nightmare on the street. Patricia, I said as calmly as I could, I'm going to need you to move your car. She gave me that look people reserve for someone who's told them they can't use expired coupons. Really? It's just one car. Surely you can be reasonable. There it was. The first drop of rain in the storm. Be reasonable. Translation: sacrifice your own comfort and property so I don't have to lift a finger. Ma'am, you're illegally parked on private property. I'd like you to move your car before this becomes more of a problem. Her hand went to her hip, the universal sign of, I'm about to Karen all over your boundaries. This is ridiculous. You're making a big fuss over a driveway. And just as I opened my mouth to respond, a silver SUV pulled up behind the Camry and, in slow-motion horror, drove onto my lawn. Not the edge. Not the easement. No, right up into my front yard, like it was a makeshift parking lot at a state fair. The driver, a woman in sequins and a fascinator, for God's sake, waved at Patricia and walked off toward the house. I stared, jaw slack, coffee mug slowly lowering. That sound you sometimes hear in movies, the one where something snaps? That was me. Internally. Like a man whose dog just got kicked by a stranger and then handed a parking ticket. Okay, I said, pulling out my phone. You've got 5 minutes to move both vehicles before I call a tow truck. Patricia actually laughed. Like I'd told her I was a wizard and could summon dragons. You wouldn't dare? This is my daughter's wedding day. Watch me. Before she could respond, a third car turned the corner. Then a fourth. One by one, they pulled in like they'd all gotten a memo that my lawn was hosting a low-budget valet service. Just park anywhere, Patricia called out, waving like she was directing air traffic. The neighbors being difficult, but don't worry, it's all fine. By the time the invasion was over, there were 8 cars. 2 in my driveway, 3 on my lawn, 1 blocking my mailbox, another so close to my front steps I'd need a grappling hook to leave the house, and 1, my personal favorite, directly on top of my flower bed. Patricia stood in the middle of the chaos like General Entitlement herself, arms crossed, victorious. There, she said, beaming. Now everyone's parked. Let's try to be more cooperative, shall we? I looked at my lawn. My beautiful, flawless lawn, now scarred with tire tracks like a battlefield. Mrs. Henderson, I said, voice low and calm, you have made a very, very big mistake. You know that quiet voice people use when they're standing at the edge of a complete breakdown? That low, deliberate tone that says, I've been polite, I've been patient, and now I'm seconds away from choosing violence. That was me. Meanwhile, Patricia stood triumphantly on my desecrated lawn like she'd just completed a successful military campaign. She clapped her hands together with the smug satisfaction of someone who thinks boundaries are optional when the event includes hors d'oeuvres and matching napkins. Look, she began, voice dripping with condescension, I understand you're concerned about your little driveway, but this is a very important day for our family. I'm sure you can be reasonable about this. There it was again. Reasonable. The magic word that entitled people deploy right before they demand you surrender something you actually care about. Ma'am, I said, still trying to maintain the illusion that I was a civilized adult and not a guy who had just watched his flower bed get assassinated. I've spent 3 years and several $1,000s making this lawn what it is. You and your guests are parked on my private property, without permission. This isn't a little misunderstanding. This is trespassing. She didn't blink, just tilted her head like a confused golden retriever and said, Marcus, it's just grass. Just grass. You ever hear 2 words so offensively wrong that your brain needs a reboot? This just grass. I replied slowly, motioning to the sprinkler head now embedded beneath someone's all-wheel drive. Cost me more than a week's paycheck. Those tire tracks? Those are permanent damage. That flower bed under your friend's car? Crushed. Patricia clicked her tongue and gave me the kind of smile people reserve for toddlers who've drawn on the walls. Oh, please, don't be so dramatic. It's not like we're throwing a rave out here. You'll never even know we were here by tomorrow. I glanced at the lawn, which now looked like it had hosted an off-road derby. Oh, I'll know. Before I could follow through on the tow truck threat, car number 9 rolled up. Then 10. Apparently, word had spread that the venue included free parking and no consequences. I watched in disbelief as guests continued to pull onto my lawn, stepping out in linen suits and cocktail dresses like they were strolling onto the grounds of a French vineyard. It was surreal, like I'd been involuntarily enrolled in the HOA version of The Purge. And Patricia? She wasn't just allowing it. She was coordinating it. Park near the bushes, but not in front of the Camry, she instructed one couple. Try not to block the steps. My husband has a bad knee. Your husband has a bad knee? Lady, I've got a broken spirit. And then she did the unthinkable. She walked over to the SUV sitting smack in the middle of my front yard, opened the back, pulled out folding chairs, and started setting up a staging area. That's right. She turned my front yard into a tailgate for the goddamn wedding. I could feel the blood pressure thudding in my temples like a war drum. I took a breath. Then another. Then a third. Because here's the thing, I don't explode. I don't scream. I plan. And Patricia had just given me all the ammo I needed. All right, I said, pulling out my phone. You've now got 15 minutes. Move every vehicle off my lawn, or I start calling for tows. She froze for a half second, just long enough for her mask to crack. But Karen-grade entitlement is resilient. She recovered fast. You're bluffing, she said, with a little laugh like she was in on a joke I didn't understand. You wouldn't humiliate a bride on her wedding day. Try me. Then came the voice from behind her. Mom, what are you doing? We both turned. There, standing in the doorway of the Henderson house, was Rebecca Henderson herself, the bride. Mid-20s, rollers still in her hair, clutching a makeup bag and looking like she had just walked into an episode of Cops, Suburban Edition. Patricia did her best damage control. Nothing to worry about, darling. Just a bit of a hiccup with the neighbor. He's being a little difficult about parking. Rebecca stepped further out. Her eyes scanned the chaos. The lawn-turned parking lot, the folding chairs, the sprinklers gasping for air under tire treads. Her mouth dropped open. Mom, she said slowly. Did you tell people to park on his lawn? It's just grass, Patricia said again, now with the fervor of a woman trying to will a lie into truth through sheer repetition. Rebecca turned to me, her expression a mix of horror and exhaustion. I am so sorry. I had no idea this was happening. I told everyone to park on the street. They're welcome to, I said. But if they're still on my lawn in 10 minutes, they'll be leaving on a flatbed. That's when Patricia tried to rally. Don't be ridiculous. You wouldn't tow a guest's car. What kind of person does that? The kind who doesn't want to spend the next 2 months fixing their sprinkler system and reseeding grass because you didn't want to use the church parking lot. Patricia scowled. Rebecca turned to her, more forcefully now. Mom, move the cars. Patricia's voice climbed an octave. Absolutely not. We're already behind schedule. We can't ask people to repark. Move the cars. I liked Rebecca. She had the tone of someone who'd been through this nonsense before and was finally done tap dancing around her mother's delusions. Patricia, clearly rattled, drew herself up like a soap opera villain. Marcus is just being petty. He'll get over it. No, I won't, I said flatly, phone still in hand. And Mike's towing? They love petty. It pays well. That's when I saw the beginnings of real panic in Patricia's eyes. Not because she'd realized she was in the wrong. Oh no. Because she was losing control. The crowd of wedding guests was now gathering near the edge of my lawn, murmuring and watching the confrontation with the kind of interest normally reserved for courtroom dramas and reality TV. Patricia adjusted her dress and tried once more. If you do this, Marcus, it will ruin my daughter's wedding. Do you want to be that kind of person? I want to be the kind of person who still has a lawn come Monday. Then I dialed. Mike? It's Marcus. Elm Street. Bring the big one. Patricia's jaw dropped the second I said, bring the big one. She blinked, not sure whether I was bluffing or just clinically unhinged. Spoiler, I was neither. Just a man who'd watched a battalion of pastel-clad guests turn his pristine lawn into the set of Fast and Furious. Entitlement drift. Wait, she stammered, hand raised like she was trying to halt a freight train with sheer optimism. Marcus, let's not escalate this. I raised an eyebrow, still on the phone with Mike. No escalation, just enforcement. You could practically see the gears grinding in Patricia's head as she tried to recalculate her approach. The usual charm wasn't working. The faux concern failed. So now she pivoted to threat mode light TM. Marcus, she said, voice syrupy and tight. I know people in this town. Important people. You're making a very dangerous choice. Oh good, I said. Then maybe one of them owns a tow company, because Mike's about to make rent off this fiasco. Rebecca, God bless her, looked like she wanted to disappear. Mom, she said again, firmer this time. Just move the cars. But Patricia didn't hear her daughter. Or more likely, she heard her and chose not to care. No, She was too busy scanning the crowd, clearly looking for someone, anyone, to back her up. Except now even the guests were side-eyeing each other, shuffling uncomfortably like they'd just realized they were all parked illegally at a wedding that might soon involve criminal charges. I hung up the phone and crossed my arms. "You've got 15 minutes. That was when Rebecca's fiancé, David, finally emerged from the house, clearly summoned by the rising noise level and perhaps the psychic signal that his wedding was teetering off a cliff. He looked young. Too young for the tux he was swimming in. Eyes wide, brow furrowed like a man realizing, just minutes before saying, "I do," that he was marrying into a three-ring circus led by a ringmaster who thought no parking signs were suggestions. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice high with stress. "Why is everyone standing around on the lawn?" Rebecca gestured helplessly. "My mom decided to turn Marcus's yard into the wedding lot." David blinked. "Wait, this Marcus?" "Yup," I said. "The guy who owns the lawn currently getting tread marks from someone's BMW." David turned to Patricia. "Mrs. Henderson, did you seriously tell guests to park on his property without asking?" Patricia looked genuinely shocked that someone had the nerve to question her imperial decisions. "Well, what was I supposed to do? The church lot was full." "No," Rebecca cut in, "it wasn't. You just didn't want people to have to walk." Patricia dismissed her with a wave. "It's a wedding, not a hike. Can we please stop making this about grass?" "Let me make it very simple," I said, stepping forward so that my voice carried clearly across the suddenly silent yard. "This is my property. That means I decide who parks here. You and your guests did not ask. You were told to move and refused. Now the tow trucks are on the way, and unless every vehicle is off my lawn by the time they show up, they'll be leaving with your cars." David looked at me, then at Rebecca, then at the lawn-turned parking lot. "Okay," he said finally. "What if we just paid for the damages?" "Like, how much?" Rebecca immediately turned to him. "David, no. This isn't about money. It's about respect." "Exactly," I said. "I don't want your money. I want my property back." Patricia clutched her pearls, literally, and gave an award-worthy gasp. "Are you trying to humiliate us? On her wedding day?" "No. Patricia," I said with a cold smile. "You did that. I'm just the guy calling the tow truck." At that exact moment, a white-haired man in a bow tie stepped out of a car parked over my azaleas and squinted into the sunlight. "Is this the venue?" And no, several people answered at once. Rebecca's shoulders slumped as she buried her face in her hands. "I told you we should have just used the country club." Patricia bristled. "It was too expensive," David muttered. "So you saved money by sacrificing someone else's lawn?" Before Patricia could respond with something truly unhinged, I checked my watch. 13 minutes. Might want to pick up the pace. A few guests finally got the message and began walking, slowly, guiltily, toward their cars. "Don't move," Patricia snapped, turning on them. "He's bluffing. If we hold out, he'll back down. This is just a power play." "No, what you're doing is a power failure," I said. That's when my neighbor Tom strolled over from across the street, holding a beer like he was settling in for a fireworks show. "Need backup?" "Just moral support," I said. He looked around at the scene. Cars on grass, the groom looking nauseous, the mother of the bride mid-meltdown, and let out a low whistle. "You gonna have this lawn reseeded, or just pave it and start charging for parking?" "Depends how many get towed." "Nice. I got lawn chairs if you want to sell tickets." Patricia glared at Tom like he'd personally offended her ancestors. "This is private family business." Tom raised his beer. "So was my cousin's divorce. Still streamed it on Facebook." Rebecca let out a groan. "I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe my mother is ruining my wedding because she couldn't be bothered to ask a basic question." And then, as if the gods themselves were tired of waiting, the first red tow truck turned the corner. You could feel the shift in the air. All smugness drained from Patricia's face. Several guests audibly gasped. One woman whispered, "Oh my God, he wasn't kidding." The truck growled up the street like a beast with a purpose, followed by a second one, Mike's nephew in tow. Mike himself leaned out the window, gave me a nod, and shouted, "Let's party." I turned to Patricia. "You've got 90 seconds left." Tick-tock. Mike's towing is the kind of operation that doesn't show up quietly. His trucks roared onto the street like Judgment Day on wheels, chrome glinting, engines purring like mechanical predators who just caught the scent of a fresh kill. People scattered. Lawn chairs clattered. Somewhere, a car alarm chirped in confused terror. Mike himself jumped down from the lead truck, clipboard in hand, baseball cap turned backward like he was about to umpire a demolition derby. His nephew Danny stepped out of the second truck, already stretching like he was prepping for Olympic-level towing. "Marcus," Mike grinned. "I heard we're clearing out a wedding." "Wedding/hostile occupation," I said. "She's parked about 10 cars on my property." Mike surveyed the lawn with a whistle. "Man, they really went for it. You want 'em all. Any vehicle still here in 60 seconds is fair game." "Oh, this is gonna be fun," Danny said, already pulling out a tow hook. That's when Patricia snapped. "You can't do this," she screeched, storming toward Mike like a woman about to slap fate across the face. "This is illegal. This is harassment." Mike, who has the patience of a DMV employee on his last shift before retirement, didn't even blink. "Ma'am, you're parked on private property. That makes these vehicles trespassers. I'm authorized by the property owner," he nodded at me, "to tow them." Patricia went from outraged to indignant in 0.6 seconds. "I demand to speak to your manager." "I am the manager." Her face twisted like she'd just bit into a lemon made of pure humiliation. "You don't understand. My daughter is getting married. This is the most important day of her life." Mike shrugged. "Then maybe don't illegally park cars on someone else's lawn. Kind of ruins the mood." One brave wedding guest, a middle-aged guy in a too-tight suit, decided self-preservation was more important than loyalty. "Okay, I'm moving my car," he said, trotting off toward his BMW. "Coward," Patricia hissed. "Nope," he replied without turning around. "Just not interested in paying towing fees and explaining it to my insurance agent." That cracked the dam. In the next 60 seconds, a flurry of movement broke out. Guests scrambled to their cars like rats off a sinking yacht. Apologies flew in every direction, some directed at me, others whispered like confessionals to nobody in particular. Within minutes, 6 of the cars were gone, leaving tire tracks and crushed grass like scars on my soul, but still gone. That left 2 vehicles, Patricia's Camry, parked squarely in my driveway like a trophy kill, and a burgundy sedan straddling what was left of my flower bed. According to Rebecca, that one belonged to her soon-to-be father-in-law, who was still inside, oblivious to the war erupting outside. "Where's the guy with the burgundy sedan?" Mike asked, tow hook in hand. "Still powdering his nose, I guess," I said. "But clock's ticking." Rebecca turned to me, exhausted. "I'll go get him." Patricia blocked her path. "Don't you dare, Rebecca. We are not abandoning this wedding because of some petty neighbor's ego trip." "Petty," I said, stepping forward. "I've let you trample my lawn, my sprinkler system, and my sanity, and I'm petty?" "You said they had 15 minutes, she snapped. "And that was 20 minutes ago. You didn't say you were serious." That one actually made me laugh. "You thought I hired 2 trucks as a joke? What did you think they were going to do, serenade the guests?" Patricia spun toward the crowd. "Everyone, don't move. This is extortion." Danny, now standing next to the Camry with a hook poised like Excalibur, looked up at me. "Permission to engage?" "Hold." The burgundy sedan's owner finally burst out the front door, suspenders half on, tie askew, looking like he'd just been told his retirement plan was gone. "What the hell's going on?" he bellowed. "Your car's illegally parked," I said. "Move it, or it gets towed." He took one look at Mike's truck backing toward his vehicle and practically dove behind the wheel. "Jesus, Patricia, you didn't say we were trespassing." "Because we weren't," she screamed. "You told me you had permission. I implied." "You lied. I enhanced the truth." Rebecca stepped in between them. "Enough. All of you, just enough." Silence rippled outward. Even the tow truck engines seemed to quiet. "This was supposed to be my wedding day," Rebecca said, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "But instead of getting married, I'm watching my mother argue with a tow truck driver while half our guests flee like there's an evacuation order." Patricia huffed. "This is all his fault." "And oh," Rebecca snapped. This is your fault. You parked cars on someone else's property. You lied to our guests. And you've spent the last hour treating this man, this neighbor, like he's some criminal for daring to protect what's his. David finally piped up. Honestly, this might be a deal breaker. Patricia gasped like she'd been shot. Oh, now it's serious, Tom said under his breath. Rebecca turned to me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Whatever happens next, you have every right. Mike stepped back, still waiting. So what's the call, Marcus? I looked at Patricia, who now stood alone on the battlefield, mascara melting, dignity in tatters, gripping her keys like a toddler refusing to leave the toy aisle. You know what? I said. Let her decide. Patricia, last chance. Move your car. Or don't. Either way, it's leaving. Her hands shook. Her jaw worked like she was chewing invisible gum. Then, in an act of pure pettiness only she could commit, she opened the driver's side door and locked herself inside. You know those viral videos where someone barricades themselves in a vehicle while the police stand around debating whose turn it is to deal with the insanity? That was us now. Patricia, queen of the Camry, had turned my driveway into her own personal Alamo. Locked in. Windows cracked just enough to yell things no one wanted to hear. Mike knocked politely on the driver's window. Ma'am, he said in a tone usually reserved for wild animals cornered in a supermarket. You need to exit the vehicle. Through the inch-wide opening, Patricia shouted. You'll have to drag me out. This is my daughter's wedding. I turned to Mike, deadpan. Can you tow a car with a Karen still in it? He shook his head. That's kidnapping. I mean, I want to, but that's a hard no. All right. Plan B. I call the cops. Do it. And with that, Mike called Officer Martinez, our neighborhood's most patient law enforcement professional and, as luck would have it, already familiar with my HOA-related adventures. If anyone could deal with a vehicular hostage situation involving a rhinestone-covered mother of the bride, it was him. Meanwhile, the crowd was growing. Neighbors emerged from their homes like prairie dogs sensing drama. Guests who'd successfully fled the scene returned to see if the stories they'd texted were real. Kids rode up on bikes and parked to watch the show like it was an episode of Judge Judy, Lawn Edition. Tom from across the street returned with a fold-out chair and a bag of popcorn. You said to bring tickets, right? Even Rebecca was standing next to him, arms crossed, watching her mother's meltdown unfold like a live-action soap opera. This is why I wanted a courthouse wedding, she muttered. Patricia, now steaming inside her locked car, was alternating between yelling through the window and dialing furiously on her phone. At one point, she shouted something about calling Channel 9 and defamation, which made Danny, bless him, burst out laughing. Then, as if summoned by the drama gods themselves, Officer Martinez's squad car pulled up with a soft whoop of the siren. He stepped out, sunglasses on, expression unreadable. He took one look at the crowd, then at the Camry turnbunker, and sighed. Marcus, he said, strolling over. Please tell me you're not running a side business where you provoke local Karens for sport. Not intentionally, I said. But at this rate, I'm considering it. Martinez approached the car and tapped on the window. Ma'am, step out of the vehicle. Patricia cracked the window further and shouted. He's trying to extort us. This is harassment. I have rights. Martinez pulled out a small notebook. Yes, ma'am. And right now, you're exercising your right to commit trespassing and disturbing the peace. It's my daughter's wedding. Yes, and it's his driveway, Martinez said calmly. You need to step out of the vehicle. Now. Patricia clutched the steering wheel like it was the last life vest on the Titanic. He's threatening to ruin the happiest day of my daughter's life. Rebecca, without missing a beat, called back. Pretty sure you handled that already, Mom. The crowd oahed. Tom spit popcorn into his lap from laughing. Even Martinez cracked a smile. This is your last warning, he said. Unlock the doors and exit the vehicle voluntarily, or I will open the door for you and charge you with trespassing. There was a long, tense pause. Patricia's face, barely visible through the glare of the windshield, looked like she was trying to calculate whether jail time was worth the moral victory of not backing down. And then, miraculously, she unlocked the door. The collective exhale from the crowd was audible. Patricia stepped out like a dethroned monarch. Shoulders tight, lips pressed into a thin line, eyes full of barely restrained rage. She turned toward me. "You have no idea who you've messed with." "Ma'am," I said, "I literally have your car's license plate in a spreadsheet titled People Who've Messed With Me." She stormed off toward the house without another word. I turned to Martinez. "So, we good?" He nodded. She steps out. You drop the complaint, and we all go back to pretending to be civilized. Deal. But the show wasn't over yet. Because just as Martinez returned to his squad car, a late-model Mercedes pulled up, blocked my driveway again, and outstepped the groom's mother. A vision in lavender and judgment. She looked around at the destruction like she was trying to decide whether to faint or sue someone. "What happened here?" she asked, eyes darting to the tire tracks, the crowd, the tow trucks. Patricia, now at the edge of the lawn, called out, "Don't worry, Sharon. It's all under control." And from the back of the crowd, Rebecca muttered, "Oh my God, it's not even over yet." If you've never seen two rival mother-in-laws meet in the middle of a suburban standoff, imagine two queens from opposing chessboards locked in a death stare, while a tow truck idles behind them like a dragon waiting to burn the board down. Sharon, David's mother and Patricia's social nemesis since the linen napkin incident at a charity gala, according to neighborhood lore, stepped onto my lawn like she was inspecting troops before battle. She didn't say a word at first, just scanned the carnage, deep tire ruts scarring the grass, the flower bed massacre, and Patricia, wobbling slightly in her heels, and what was now a thoroughly sweat-streaked dress. Then she raised a single, surgically sharpened eyebrow. "I see you've made quite the impression," she said, voice like silk hiding a razor blade. Patricia, flustered and panting from her Camry protest, tried to regain control of the narrative. "Oh, Sharon, don't be dramatic. We had a minor issue with parking, but everything's under control." Sharon looked at the tow trucks, looked at the police officer, looked at my front yard, which now resembled a battlefield in a documentary titled When Bridesmaids Attack. Then she turned to me. "You must be Mr. Taylor?" "Marcus," I said, extending a hand. "Owner of the trampled lawn and formerly peaceful Saturdays." She shook my hand with practiced grace. "On behalf of anyone with a conscience, I sincerely apologize for this." "No offense," I said, nodding toward Patricia. "But if this is what comes with a wedding invitation, I'm good with just sending a card." Sharon chuckled. Patricia fumed. "Sharon," she snapped, "if you're not going to help, you can at least stop making it worse." "Oh, darling," Sharon said, brushing imaginary lint off her sleeve. "I'm not the one who commandeered a neighbor's property like a suburban Napoleon." Rebecca had been standing silently nearby, watching the clash like a front-row spectator at a tennis match from hell. But now she stepped forward, calm, clear-eyed, and done. "David," she said, turning to her fiancé, "can we talk?" David looked nervous. The kind of nervous that suggests he suddenly remembered a dentist appointment 3 states away. "Sure." They stepped aside to the edge of the porch, where I could still hear everything, because subtlety wasn't exactly an option with 20 neighbors and 2 tow trucks loitering nearby. "This is all a disaster," Rebecca said, her voice low but firm. "I know," David said, glancing toward the crowd. "But your mom was just trying to help." "No," she cut in. "She was trying to control everything. And you let her. I didn't know she was going to. But you didn't stop her." Rebecca's tone was sharp now. "You saw what she was doing. And instead of saying something, you waited until cars were getting towed and police were called before you even asked her to move them." David was silent. Rebecca sighed. "If this is what being married to you looks like, letting your mother bulldoze boundaries while you stand by and hope it all works out, I can't do it." "You're calling off the wedding?" David asked, eyes wide. "I'm calling off this version of it," Rebecca said. "I wanted a marriage, not a PR stunt held hostage by parental egos." And then she turned to me, right there in front of everyone. "Marcus," she said, "I want to apologize. You were right to stand your ground. And I'm sorry you had to spend your Saturday dealing with all this." "Honestly," I said, This is the most exciting thing to happen on Elm Street since the Great Raccoon Standoff of 2019. Rebecca managed a small laugh. Then, for the final blow, she turned back to Patricia, who was now watching with wide, disbelieving eyes. "Mom," Rebecca said, "I'm leaving. I need space. From you. From this whole circus. I need to figure out what I want without you deciding for me." Patricia looked like she'd just been slapped with a bouquet of cold, hard truth. "Rebecca, don't be ridiculous. You're overreacting." "No, Mom. I've spent 26 years under your thumb, and it took a ruined flower bed to realize that's not how I want to live anymore." Rebecca walked off, straight past the guests, past Sharon, who nodded solemnly, and down the sidewalk, curlers still in her hair, mascara smudged, dragging a wheeled suitcase behind her like a bride escaping a reality show. David didn't follow. Patricia looked at him. "Well, aren't you going to do something?" David looked around at the wreckage of his almost wedding. The neighbors watching. The guests mumbling and leaving. The police officer sipping coffee on my porch like this was his favorite episode of Cops, HOA edition. "I think she just did it for both of us," he said. And then, as if the universe wanted to tie it all together with a bow of poetic justice, Mike turned to me and said, "So, still want us to tow the Camry?" I smiled. "Oh, please do. Consider it the exclamation point." Patricia gasped. "You can't." "Not now, ma'am," Mike said, already lowering the tow hook. "You had an hour to move it. Time's up." And as Patricia screamed, "This isn't over," while her car was winched onto a flatbed in front of what remained of her shattered wedding dreams, I took a long, slow sip of my coffee. Best Saturday ever. You ever watch someone realize, in real time, that they're not the main character? That was Patricia, standing in the wreckage of her grand suburban fantasy, watching her daughter wheel a suitcase down the sidewalk like she was late for an episode of Brides Who've Had Enough. The tow truck hauled her Camry onto the flatbed with a low mechanical growl. It was beautiful, almost symphonic. The hydraulics groaned like the final notes of justice. Patricia didn't scream this time. She didn't lunge or claw at the driver. She just stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish trying to negotiate a ceasefire with a shark. "Wait," she croaked. "Rebecca, please, don't go." Rebecca didn't look back. Tom, seated comfortably in his lawn chair with a beer in hand, muttered, $10 says she tries to blame the whole thing on gluten." I almost laughed, but I was too busy watching Patricia try to reboot reality. "This is a misunderstanding," she said loudly, turning to the dwindling crowd of guests. "This isn't how things were supposed to happen." David stepped forward then, tuxedo wrinkled, boutonniere wilting, the very picture of a man reconsidering his entire life. "You're right," he said. "It wasn't. But that's what happens when you bulldoze over people." Patricia looked wounded. "I was doing it for Rebecca." "No," David said quietly. "You were doing it for you." And boom, just like that, Patricia Henderson lost the audience. Even her loyal Bridge Club cronies were suddenly fascinated by the cracks in the sidewalk. Guests started murmuring and backing away like someone had farted at a funeral. No one wanted to be the last one associated with the woman whose car was currently being towed off the driveway she never had permission to be on. Mike, ever the professional, gave me a thumbs up as he secured the Camry. "She paid up front, right?" "Nope," I replied. "Even better." Patricia finally turned to me, her voice quiet now. "This wasn't supposed to happen." "Funny," I said. "I was thinking the same thing when your guests parked on my sprinkler heads." She winced. Not because of guilt. No, that would require a functioning empathy module, but because she was no longer in control. And for someone like Patricia, that's worse than any fine, any tow, any cancellation. Power was the game, and she had just lost the entire tournament on live display. I didn't gloat. Okay, I did a little. But mostly, I stood there, hands in my pockets, lawn torn up, flower bed dead, and felt good. Not because of the damage. Not because of the drama, but because, finally, someone stood up to her. Rebecca did what most people in her position never do. She walked away. From the circus. From the performance. From the suffocating grip of parental control disguised as love. And it hit Patricia like a freight train of consequences. She stood, wobbling slightly, watching as the tow truck disappeared around the corner with her Camry like it was dragging away the last of her dignity. Her guests scattered like confetti. David sat down on the porch steps and put his head in his hands. That's when Officer Martinez stepped back over. "Well," he said, glancing at the thinning crowd. "That escalated quickly." I snorted. "Just another quiet weekend in the suburbs." He looked over at Patricia, who was now muttering to herself like a villain rehearsing a monologue. "You pressing charges?" "No," I said. She embarrassed herself more than any court ever could. He nodded. "Fair. If she tries anything again, you've got this incident on record now. Trespassing, obstruction, public disturbance. That's a full bingo card." I shook his hand. "Thanks, Martinez. Try to keep it boring next weekend, huh?" "No promises." As he walked away, Sharon approached me, now the only guest still lingering with her lavender dress and quiet dignity. "Marcus," she said, "I just wanted to say, you handled this with far more patience than I would have." "Thank you," I said. "Coming from you, that's basically a Congressional Medal of Honor." She smiled faintly. "I've known Patricia for 20 years. You can only push back so long before someone finally digs in their heels. Guess I was the unlucky one. Or maybe," she said, glancing down the road where Rebecca had vanished, "you were the one who finally helped someone see the truth." Then she handed me a business card. "Call me when you get the repair estimate. I'll make sure the family covers it." Quietly. "Appreciated." And with that, Sharon walked off, graceful, composed, and definitely filing away this entire event for future gossip fuel. I looked at my lawn, rutted, torn, bedraggled. My flowers were done for. My sprinklers would need replacing. The mailbox still leaned slightly, like even it couldn't believe what it had witnessed. But as I sat back on my porch steps, coffee finally cool, I realized something. It had been worth it. Because that day, a Karen learned that not everything revolves around her. A bride reclaimed her independence. A wedding collapsed, but a woman stood up for herself. And I got a damn good story out of it. 3 days after the great wedding fiasco, a plain white envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address, but the handwriting was elegant, like someone who had their signature turned into a font. Inside, a check for $3,000 and a note that read, "Dear Mr. Taylor, on behalf of the Henderson family, minus Patricia, please accept this for the damages to your property. I deeply regret how things unfolded. Sincerely, Robert H. Langston, former future father-in-law." Well, at least someone had a functioning moral compass. The note went up on my fridge next to a cartoon of a chicken wearing sunglasses and the words "Stay cool." It seemed fitting. A week later, Rebecca showed up in person. I recognized her immediately, even without the veil, the curlers, or the shattered wedding dreams. She looked different, relaxed, lighter, like someone who'd just put down a 26-year-old weight shaped exactly like her mother. "Hey," she said, holding a small pot of begonias. "Thought you might want to replace the flowers." "You didn't have to do that," I said, gesturing for her to sit on the porch. "I know," she replied, "but I wanted to." We sat in the August breeze, quiet for a beat. Then she said, "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For doing what I never had the nerve to. Drawing a line. Standing your ground." I shrugged. "You did the hard part. You walked away." She smiled. "David called off the engagement too. Said he was more upset about the wedding being canceled than about how I was treated. That told me everything I needed to know." Oof. Brutal, but honest. "I'm sorry it turned out like that," I said. "I'm not," she replied. "You think the universe has to blow up your life for no reason? Sometimes it's just making room for something better." Smart kid. She helped me replant the flower bed. We didn't talk much, just worked in companionable silence. Sometimes healing starts with dirt under your nails and a clean break. As for Patricia, well, the neighborhood grapevine is undefeated. According to Tom, my unofficial informant and lawn chair enthusiast, she's been telling anyone who'll listen that I staged a vendetta and ruined the wedding of the century. She also reportedly tried to file a small claims suit for emotional distress, which the court dismissed so fast it left a paper burn. She's since taken a social media sabbatical and hasn't shown her face at a single HOA meeting. Tragic, really. Who will terrorize the bake sale committee now? But don't worry, her legacy lives on. I installed 3 bright red, private property, towing enforced signs along the edge of my lawn the day after everything went down. They sparkle under the porch light like little boundary guardians. Some say petty. I say preventative maintenance. Mike now refers to that Saturday as the day we hit the jackpot. He even offered to give me a discount if I ever need an encore. Martinez still chuckles every time he sees me at the grocery store. Last week, he asked if I'd consider doing community mediation. I told him I charge in begonias and beer. My lawn, slowly recovering, bears the scars of that day like a badge of honor. The grass will grow back. The sprinklers will be fixed. The flowers replanted. But the message? That's permanent. You don't get to treat people like props in your little drama. Not without consequences. And definitely not in my yard. So now, every Saturday morning, I sit on my porch with a fresh cup of coffee and watch the sunlight dance across my lawn. No Camrys. No SUVs. No uninvited bridal parades. Just peace. And every now and then, when someone walks their dog past and slows to admire the flowers, I smile. Because the lawn survived, and the Karen didn't win. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.